So he has made a lot of announcements last week or like the week before. What should we expect from the Trump administration? Do you think that they will fulfill their promises? Should we see a lot of changes internally and externally based on these promises and the new plans that they announced?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think this was one of the debates that people had is what is the second Trump administration going to be like? Is it going to be like the first? Is it going to be more moderate, more sort of farther to the right? Is it going to be more what Trump campaigned on? I think there's a mix of views on that. I think it's becoming more and more clear, though, that it's going to be a very Trumpian second term, which will be different than the first term. The first term, again, I think you had a lot of folks in the administration and a lot of people who didn't necessarily fully agree with the president on a lot of issues. And what we're seeing, and I'll sort of walk us through the way the cabinet is shaping up and sort of what some of his appointments will look like. But I would say it's looking like it's going to be a different second term. Again, more of a Trumpian term, more aligned with his views, and I think more reflecting what his objectives are. So with that, I would say, again, very high level, what we're seeing with the initial cabinet appointments or sort of planned appointments is loyalty is first and foremost very important. So this is something that, again, a lot of people were talking about last time. There were people in the administration that Trump feels, and a lot of people who support Trump feel that they didn't necessarily agree with the president on a lot of issues. So Trump, I think, wants to make sure that's not the case this time. So I'll take you very high level through the cabinet appointments just to give people sort of a taste or an overview of what that's looking like and sort of a high level analysis to what we can expect. So if we go into, for example, the State Department. So Trump's going to be appointing Marco Rubio. I don't know if you've heard of this guy.
No, State Department is the Foreign Affairs.
Foreign Affairs, exactly. So yeah, good point. So everybody calls it something a little bit different. But then I want to highlight some of the commonalities that you're going to see with some of these appointments. So Marco Rubio, he's a long-term senator now from Florida, big supporter of the president. Again, some of the things that are specific to Rubio, he's very much a China hawk. So aggressive on China, strong on China, in terms of labeling them as a rival and wanting to formulate policy to put pressure on the Chinese regime. Same thing with Iran, so I'd consider him an Iran hawk as well. And then, interestingly, when it comes to Russia, your home country, it's a little bit more nuanced, very similar to Trump. So Trump is very clear, or had been very clear during the campaign, that China is probably the number one rival, as he would identify to the U.S., that Iran is a rival of the U.S., but that he views Russia not necessarily in the same way. So Marco Rubio, high levels reflected that as of late. You've got this guy who is a little bit less well known, a guy named Pete Hegseth for Defense Department. So this is an ex-combat veteran, Bronze Star, recipient, ex-Wall Street, Princeton graduate, Harvard graduate. But his real claim to fame has been that he's been a Fox News co-host over most of the last 10 years. So a lot of people are coming out and criticizing the appointment. What you're just putting some talking head as the head of the largest defense department on the planet, But again, one of the biggest things is he's a big time Trump loyalist. Some of the, not famous statements, but some of the statements that he's made sort of most clearly as to how he'd like to be the defense secretary revolves around making the military as anti-woke as possible. So again, a lot of debate around that, but he's very much against woke in the military.
I'm trying to imagine woke in the military.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a whole other thing. I mean, we could even maybe put some TikToks of some of the examples of, again, these are just people in the military who are being woke. It's a deeper debate as to how woke the military really is.
Hi, my name is Johnny, and I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, and I'm Conchi, and I use she, her pronouns.
And we're here to talk about pronouns.
This is the story of a soldier who operates your nation's Patriot missile defense systems. With a little girl raised by two moms. I also marched for equality.
The Defense Department is paying the surgery costs for a transgender service member.
And we understand, and I want to understand white rage.
But anything, for example, he's against transgenders in the military, stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, by and large, he's made that very clear, very, very anti-woke. Another China hawk, Iran hawk, and again, very similar on Russia, where he's a bit in the middle. So I think that's going to be interesting, and that's one of the themes that that I've been seeing. His most controversial proposed appointment to date is a guy named Matt Gaetz. So this guy has been a congressman since. Have you heard of this guy, Matt Gaetz? You haven't heard of any of these guys?
No. For me,
it's all brand new.
All the appointments for me, they sound like no names.
Okay, excellent. Well, then I'm gonna hopefully, tell you a little bit about these guys. So again, most controversial proposed appointment by far. He's been a congressman since 2010. Former lawyer, staunch Trump ally. So big time Trump ally. Has openly said that, he's MAGA all the way and he's going to support Trump no matter what the case is, rooting out corruption, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all sort of very important points that he's made. Again, one of his biggest topics is the deep state or the administrative state, and he really wants to go after that sort of in whatever form that him or Trump would see to do that. And again, it's probably going to be the toughest confirmation for Trump, of all the appointments so far. So one of his Republican colleagues in the House of Representatives, so again, not a Democrat, but a Republican, came out and said that Matt Gaetz has a better shot of having dinner with Queen Elizabeth than getting confirmed. And as you know, Queen Elizabeth is no longer with us. So
dark joke.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Congress people are known for their humor, but yeah, so that's kind of that's a major sort of testament to how he's very divisive, right? Even within the Republican Party. Your Interior Secretary is a guy named Doug Burgum. So North Dakota governor, big energy producing state, third biggest producer of energy in the country. So again, he's very much in favor of opening up energy production on U.S. federal land. So again, energy is a common theme. China, Iran, these type of things are some of the themes. The Health and Human Services Secretary proposed appointment, RFK Jr. You've heard? Okay.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's probably the most famous of the proposed appointments. Of course, he's the famous son of Robert F. Kennedy, who was assassinated, and then the nephew of John F. Kennedy, who was also assassinated, the former president. This guy's actually a registered Democrat who endorsed Trump. Again, he's looking to ban chemicals in food. He's looking to, he's opposed to fluoride being in the American water, for example.
I think he was one of the leading anti-vaccination guys.
Yeah, that's a more complicated one. I wouldn't call him totally anti-vaccine. I think he was probably anti-COVID vaccine.
Okay.
I think he's more vaccine skeptic, where he's not totally sold on all the vaccines necessarily. But definitely he has I think very heterodox views when it comes to some of these health policies, right? So again, whether it's vaccines, whether it's some of the chemicals in food, whether it's pesticides, for example, he's really looking to change a number of the policies around that. So we'll see exactly what he's allowed to do. Trump said he's going to let him run wild as the secretary. So what can he do? What does he try to do is going to be an open question, but that could be an area where you get a lot of change. And again, he has his own slogan called MAHA. So you have MAGA, right? Make America Great Again. His is Make America Healthy Again. So that's again, a bit of RFK Jr. He's very much against the administrative state, deep state as well.
All right.
So again, that's another common theme. Very quickly on energy, you've got a guy named Chris Wright, who's the current CEO of Liberty Energy. So again, a big oil and gas company. He's currently CEO. You're going to make him Secretary of Energy. What do you expect? Pro oil and gas, decrease regulation where you can, increase production where you can. Again, another common theme.
Yes, again, so no green energy, like oil and gas traditional.
I mean, he's not going to ban green energy, but he's definitely not going to support, I think, to the same extent the Democrats would. And I think the Republicans are going to do everything they can to boost oil and gas production, make oil and gas be, operate as unencumbered as possible. So the idea being America's got all these resources, don't limit in any way America's capacity to exploit those resources. Okay. So, yeah. But you'll still get your electric cars. You still have your Tesla and all that stuff. CIA director, so his proposal is a guy named John Ratcliffe. This was another sort of questionable, not John Ratcliffe itself, but this was something that a lot of people were focused on, to say who's the CIA director going to be, because that's an area where the CIA has come under a lot of criticism, particularly from Trump and a lot of the MAGA folks. So people were worried, in sort of the in the media and in the state apparatus, whether it's the CIA or the intelligence community. And they were wondering, okay, who's Trump going to appoint? Is it going to be somebody who's trying to go after the intelligence community? Is it going to be sort of an ally? And according to what I was reading, CNN was reporting that this was probably the best of the bunch for the intelligence community. So you're not getting this guy who's coming in to say, we're going to tear down the CIA, we're going to do all of these reforms or anything like that. We'll see what comes of it. He's a Trump loyalist, but again, supposedly the pick that they most wanted to see. Then you've got his chief of staff. So it's a woman named Susie Wiles, who was Trump's campaign manager for this cycle.
27-year-old blondie, right? This is
no, it's a press secretary.
Oh,
that's
okay.
a press secretary.
Okay.
No surprise on that, by the way. No surprise. That's a common theme with Trump. He does like the younger blonde women as his press secretaries. Fair enough. I think it works. So yeah, this was Trump's campaign manager from this cycle, right, from 2024. So she's really credited with being a lot of the brains behind the operation. The operation was obviously went really well, right? He won the election and all of that. And it's actually the first woman selected to the role. So Trump embracing a little bit of DE&I, maybe you could call him maybe a DE&I champion even. So that's the chief of staff. Then you've got the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. He's trying to appoint a guy who, when asked about what he would do as the head of the EPA, hasn't said anything about the environment, but instead said he wants to open things up for business. He wants to ease emission standards, make it easier for companies and businesses to be prosperous and all of that, which he came under fire for the reason of, okay, you're the EPA director, Environmental Protection Agency, and yet you don't seem to be all that interested in protecting the environment, so to speak. But again, that's just a criticism. The opposing view is, well, you want to open up things for the economy and you want to fulfill Trump's mission, right, which is boost energy production, make American industry more competitive. Right. Again, similar story. DNI, Director of National Intelligence, is a woman named Tulsi Gabbard. Do you know her? So again, another former Democrat. She actually ran for the Democratic candidacy in 2020, ran against Joe Biden. So in some world, if she won the primary in 2020, she could have ran against Trump in 2020. Now she's part of Trump's cabinet, or wants to be part of Trump's cabinet. She's famous for being, again, a former Army veteran, ex-House representative from Hawaii, famous for her more isolationist views on foreign policy, and again, is very critical of the deep state of the administrative state. And she's going to be in charge of the again, Director of National Intelligence, so foreign policy advice, all of this stuff. So people, particularly more traditional Republicans, were a bit, maybe surprised by that. Then you've got the border czar, a guy named Tom Homan. Tom Homan, have you heard of this guy?
This is the one from Texas.
I think he's from Texas, yeah.
Okay.
So again, this guy is hardcore when it comes to immigration. Yeah. He was the former ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement head under Trump for, I think, about a year. Former Border Patrol, staunch border hawk. So he said at the Republican National Convention to illegal immigrants, you better start packing now to everybody, because if Trump was going to win, that they were going to try to kick people out.
Was he involved in the last year tensions on the border in Texas?
Good question. I vaguely remember seeing him somehow involved. But he wasn't in any position of power. So if he was, it would have been just from from a media perspective or from a commentary perspective.
Because I think I read that he was one of the not formal, but one of the acting leaders during these tensions. So
not under Biden. So he was the acting head, I think, from 2017 and 2018. We can fact check to see if maybe he did have a role under Biden. I'm pretty sure he didn't, because again, he's very staunchly against what Biden was doing with immigration, and obviously wants to change things pretty substantially. So again, he really wants to crack down on the border. And then we've got something called DOGE, which I think you might want to talk a little bit about. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to be leading that initiative. So DOGE stands for not the coin, not the crypto, but the Department of Government Efficiency. So their task is to eliminate waste in the U.S. federal budget. Federal budget is $6.5 trillion. Trump has asked them, find whatever you can, eliminate the waste. Elon Musk is saying maybe they can find up to $2 trillion of waste. We'll see if that actually happens. But from my perspective, high-level summary, I'm seeing a lot of Trump loyalists. I'm seeing a lot of anti-administrative state. I'm seeing a lot of border hawks. I'm seeing a lot of Iran hawks, China hawks, and very, very much a pro-energy administration. So again, I would say Trump 2.0 will be Trump on steroids. So again, less folks who are against his vision, people who are more loyal to him. And then again, I think you're going to have more, combative policy towards China, towards Iran. Obviously, big focus on the border, pro-energy, but that's sort of what I'm seeing, very high level from Trump so far. Anything from your side? What are you seeing?
From first of all, from your overview, what I noticed that there are quite some female names in the office.
Yeah,
and it goes actually against the narrative that media try to portray, that like Trump is against women, like he will never promote women, and so on and so on. I think actually like it is the example of he's actually trying to like make the balance in the office.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was, again, one of those criticisms that always seemed a little bit, people were grasping at straws, right? Yes, he said things that are offensive to people, obviously, but to call him a blatant misogynist, right? A blatant racist. You can say he's maybe said things that are misogynistic or racist. You can make the argument, but yeah, I mean, obviously how can he be a complete misogynist and be anti-women if he's appointing women to his cabinet? Totally agree.
Yeah. I think like from the international perspective, everybody was he was famous for saying like, I will end up the conflict between Russia and Ukraine in 24 hours, right? But I think what we observed in his first contacts, he made like a couple of first contacts with the Ukrainian president. He talked to European heads, and the common narrative that I noticed is like he's way more balanced in reality. Like whenever they talk to him, I think like the German chancellor said this, that like his media position and his media position is way more extreme compared to his one-on-one talks. So, and like if I look at my home country in Russia, how they reacted. So first of all, I think it's very noticeable that Putin actually congratulated Trump being elected as a president. He didn't do it before. He didn't do it to Biden. He didn't do it, and nobody was expecting him to congratulate Trump as well. It's kind of a diplomatic etiquette, but it shows the readiness to work with the president or not. So I think it's some of the signs. I don't know. At the same time, the common media narrative again that Trump being pro-Russian, he has never been pro-Russian, and I'm sure he will never be pro-Russian because anyway, Russia is considered to be one of the top enemies enemies or rivals to America. So the first reaction, also what I noticed in the media back in Russia, it was in regards to Ukraine. What do they think is he will be pushing both sides, and he will be pushing both sides to negotiate to find some kind of a deal, but the way he's going to be pushing this is very challenging, and this is very interesting and very controversial, because how you can push two countries that are in a military conflict, you can either force one of them to surrender, or you can support it to the ends where another side will have to surrender, or you will increase the costs to be unbearable. So this is very controversial, and all the analysts, all the political analysts, all the military analysts, like they are divided now into the forecast and into the expectations. So we will see what will happen, but it can go either direction. Like as anything with Trump, like anything can go either direction. And I personally find very interesting these DOGE.
Before you get into DOGE, I just want to add one more point on the Russia thing. I think everything you're saying is spot on, because again, he always gets everybody takes him literally but not seriously, and I think you should take Trump seriously but not literally, right? So again, take Russia for example. How many times has he talked about, oh yeah, I want to be friends with Putin, I want to be friends with Putin, I want to be friends with Russia? We talked about it in one of our previous episodes. Trump was the first president to give lethal weapons to Ukraine. Exactly. So you say he's so pro-Russia, but Putin himself has also said, Trump is not necessarily so pro-Russia at all. He has nice rhetoric, but the actions aren't necessarily there. And I think Russia's actually maybe hedging its bets a little bit, because what Trump could do, Trump is also very much a personality-driven guy, right? ego-driven guy, these type of things. If he views Putin as insulting him, so if he wants to make an offer to Putin and Putin doesn't want to play ball and doesn't want to negotiate with Trump, I could also see Trump. I'm not saying I think this will happen, but I could see Trump saying, okay, fine, we're going to rush all this military equipment to Zelensky, to Ukraine to help them. If you don't want to negotiate with me, you got to come sit at the table because I told my people I'm going to make a deal. I want to make a deal. I could totally see that happening. So I think Trump is, again, unpredictable, and that unpredictability is one of his assets. You just don't really know what you're going to get. So it could go either way, as you said, but that'll be interesting. Anyways, go back to DOGE.
100%. Like, and this is exactly the debate between the military analysts. Like, they don't know what to expect, and again, as we said, either direction. To the DOGE. DOGE.
Yeah, I don't even know how you pronounce it, but
yeah. So
we can go with DOGE.
Government efficiency. I think it's a very interesting initiative because I did some research, and there is an index called like Good Government Index made by Chandler University. They rank the governments based on the 7 parameters, starting from the leadership to the law, efficiency of the institutes, ability for people to get promoted socially, economically, and so on, the education, healthcare, a lot of parameters, like in 7 clusters. According to this index, currently the United States is number 15th in the rating, while Singapore, for example, is number 1.
For efficiency, government efficiency.
Government efficiency,
Okay.
yeah. So I think the overall idea, UE, for example, where we are right now, is 14th.
Okay.
Above the US.
Of course, I'm not surprised.
United Kingdom is number 11.
Wow.
I'm surprised.
Now I'm surprised by that. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So
efficient. Well, I don't want to criticize the UK government too much, but efficient in sometimes not always achieving the objective. Anyways, yeah, that's a whole different topic.
Right. Yeah. And like in particular, for example, America is going down in terms of the ease of doing business in this particular index, in this particular rating, while UE, on the contrary, is number 1 in this.
That didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, didn't surprise me at all too. So I think the idea of increasing the governmental efficiency, and like we understand that the institutions in the US, they're like quite old, even though quite well established and balanced. But I think it's a very good idea to look at this from this perspective, to look at this from the efficiency perspective. Very interesting promise, as you mentioned, like to cut the expenses in 2 trillion. I think he also promised to cut several thousands of jobs. What was it? Was it 80,000?
I would say at least. I mean, the federal government is multi-million man labor force. I think it's the biggest human organization on the planet, is my understanding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I like the announcement they made for hiring people. You should get ready to work 80 plus hours a week, probably for free. And we need like top 1 candidates. And if you are not interested in working for free and giving like your whole life to us, don't even send your resumes.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I'm really looking forward to see what will happen.
Yeah.
In this regards,
it's going to be interesting. I think to your point, though, again, it's a huge budget, right? $6.5 trillion. Interestingly, so I think Musk came out and said that he said it sort of off the cuff at a rally, so he might not have really thought through what he was saying, but he threw out the number of $2 trillion that they would try to find a cut. The issue with that is I was listening to a video from Larry Summers, famous economist, and he was saying that the U.S. discretionary federal budget, so the amount of money that they actually can choose to change spending on a given year. So again, $2 trillion is discretionary. $4.5 trillion is mandatory spending. So that would be like your entitlement programs, your Social Security, your Medicare, which is the healthcare for elderly folks, the healthcare to the poorer folks. So all of that is mandatory spending. So there's only $2 trillion in discretionary. So if you're going to cut, you would cut from that $2 trillion. So when Elon Musk comes out and says, "Oh, I'm sure we could find $2 trillion to cut," well, probably pretty unrealistic. But again, if you can save $500 billion, if you can, who knows, save $1 trillion, I think to your point, these efficiency measures, they're not bad, right? So let's explore it. Let's see what happens. I mean, I think it's an exciting concept to have, arguably the smartest guy on the planet, Elon Musk, and then another brilliant guy in Vivek Ramaswamy. See what you can do, see what you come up with. And look, I think the U.S. could absolutely use some more efficiency in government.
I also saw the number that SpaceX alone has 3 trillion governmental contracts.
3 trillion.
Yeah, 3 trillion.
Okay,
worth.
3 trillion, I'd be surprised. But now, that's a whole nother thing, and that's what a lot of critics would say, which
Absolutely.
is Elon obviously could arguably have, ulterior motives. But at the same time, having listened to a lot of Elon, having seen him in a lot of interviews, I really think this guy doesn't really care. I mean, not to say he doesn't care about his wealth, but he already is the richest man in the world, right? He's worth like $200 billion. Is he really losing sleep over government contracts for one of his companies, right? That's just one of them. You still got Tesla, you still got Neuralink, you still have all these other things. That I don't know. And look, you can even make the argument on the corruption point or the alleged corruption, whatever. If Elon would have lost, then what? Or sorry, if Trump would have lost, then what? Right? So then Elon, theoretically, if you're worried about corruption or whatever, then people would have maybe said, oh, well, then is the government going to not work with him for some of these contracts? So I think Elon's actually doing it out of his own, not economic interest, but just personal interest. That he, I think might actually have some positive motives. So
Totally agree on this. Like, I'm sure these contracts, they didn't appear yesterday.
yeah, they've definitely been there. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Anything to add on that, or are we good?
Let's see what will happen with the new administration. All that you mentioned, these are the proposals, right? When do we know the actual, like,
What's going to happen?
Yeah, actually what is going to happen, and the actual, like, when we will see the actual office.
Yep. So Trump enters office January 20th. So January 20th, 2025. Excuse me. So January 5th, 2025 is Inauguration Day. So from there, that's again when his administration starts. So that's when all the appointments will be coming through. That's when the formal government structure will be up in place. But in this interim period from now until then, he is building that framework, right? So he's getting all the votes required for the Senate confirmation, because again, most of these people that I mentioned do need Senate confirmation. So he proposes a person. It's not like he can just appoint anybody and there's no process. He needs the Senate to confirm them with a majority vote. Now, the Republicans will have a majority, but a relatively slim majority, right? 53 out of 100. So he needs 50 votes on everybody. Otherwise, the appointment would be rejected. So again, we'll see what happens. But January 20th is when the administration enters office. Again, my guess is they're going to be much more prepared this time around, knowing how government works. Again, Trump was a businessman before he became a politician, right? So now having that experience, my guess is the framework will be in place, everything will be ready to go. But yeah, January 20th, everything becomes official.
Okay.
So let's see.
Let's see.